Hi guys, I'm going to take you through my normal process for a photo of food today in Lightroom, and then I'll most likely finish it off in Photoshop. The tapping on the floor is my dog. He's just wandering around, wondering who on earth I'm talking to, obviously. But yeah, I'll get started. I should add, I'll show you the information on what this was taken on and stuff. So this was on my Olympus lens, 25mm, but it's on a crop sensor, so in a full frame it would be 50mm, so the nifty 50 lens, and it's taken on my Lumix G3 camera. It's a Panasonic camera, micro four thirds sensor, and it was taken at 40th of a second, f2, and the maximum range of the lens is f1.8, so I just do f2 because it's nearly 1.8, but some people say it's a bit sharper. Lowest ISO possible, 40th of a second. There wasn't any camera shake because I actually used a tripod, mainly because it was getting slightly dark, so the shutter speed was going to be a problem. The image isn't perfect, but it's just for Instagram, so I'm not gonna I'm not too fussed about the composition. I don't really like how close this is to the bottom here. But anyway, back to editing. So we've got the whites done, and you may think this is too bright here, but we can pull that back with the highlights later. So the second thing I always do is the blacks. So if we hold down Alt or Option again, we got nothing blown out, and we always like to see a few specks that are like starting to lose information, just because it doesn't really matter if a few specks are, that means everything else will be at the right end of the histogram. So moving this to the left, we can see stuff becomes darker and darker, and you can see what that does to the actual image. It actually looks really good, kind of increases the contrast if we actually do it quite a lot. I'm not going to do it that far because when we increase our contrast slider, it will make the blacks darker anyway. So I'm just going to take that to about here. And a neat trick is actually, and this isn't going to take it to where I want it, but if you hold down Shift and double click the black slider, it will actually take it to where it thinks the correct spot on the slider is meant to be for the blacks. Same for the whites, I'll do that there. So the whites, because there's a bit blown out at 0, it actually reduces the whites, but I'm going to undo both of those changes. Anyway, so the next stage, what I do is increase the contrast. And I don't play with the highlights and shadows yet because the contrast will change them and then I just have to readjust them. So I'll just do the contrast first. And I always compare increasing the contrast with the tone curve versus the contrast slider. So I'll increase the contrast to 40, because that's roughly approximate to a strong contrast on this tone curve here, and that's too strong. I won't do it that high, or yeah, probably not. And then I'll take it back to 0 by double clicking on contrast, and then I'll add strong contrast using the tone curve, and they do very slightly different things. You can see when I switch between the two, if you keep an eye on the histogram, they do slightly different things. Generally, the tone curve, the blacks are darker, and the contrast slider, the blacks are slightly higher. They add roughly the same amount of contrast when you add it, take it to 40. So, which do I like better? I think I like just the straight up contrast slider better. We don't lose too much information. And I'll probably add a bit more contrast later on, or take the blacks down even more. So I'm happy with that. Now, so we're going to leave the tone curve alone. The contrast sliders, we're going to leave that at 40. I think the exposure is fine. You can see what happens to our histogram if we change the exposure. Underexposing could look quite nice if we're going for a kind of ghostly look with a kind of, we've got a side light here, no light coming in from the left. That looks kind of okay actually, but I'll probably do that right at the end. Anyway, onto our highlights and shadows. Sorry, no, let's do clarity next, because that also messes with the highlights and shadows. Clarity, it's going to probably look pretty good with these plants. Clarity is basically contrast, but in the midtones, meaning it won't really affect the blacks and the whites, but it will affect like textures, like here and the plants. So if we whack that really high, you can see it looks great on the plant, and it's done something funny to the blacks here. It looks okay on the Tzatziki. It's a bit gritty, but I would never have it that high for this image anyway. I'll probably do it selectively, because if you see the background, it makes the background stand out a lot. We don't really want that. We only want the food and the plant to stand out. This is mint and parsley, by the way. So I think I'll just add a touch of clarity, just 5, which doesn't look like it does much. You can see the difference. It just adds a slight snap, and then I'll add some clarity using an adjustment brush later to the plant and the Tzatziki. Now onto our highlights and shadows. Let's just see what they both do. So highlights affect basically anything from like this point onwards around here on Instagram, which is basically anything which looks bright but not too bright. And to recover them, we'll recover information, because there's still information in here. You can see that everything comes back, just detail is recovered. But that doesn't look great because the contrast is depleted. So, and increasing it just blows out the Tzatziki. I think all I'm going to do is slightly decrease it. Maybe, oh, that's not slightly, but it's quite a lot. But the whites are quite high, so it can still cope with it. Let's see what that does. Reset it and see the difference. Yeah, I like what that does. And then we can always take the whites higher if it reduces the exposure of the Tzatziki. Now the shadows is going to be mainly affecting the floor and the side of the bowl. So I doubt we're going to increase the shadows. So that doesn't look great. Everything's just a kind of the same exposure. Ruins the contrast. If we take it down, I don't really care about the floor, or rather the backdrop. The what do you call it? The whatever the plate is on. You know, it's just some tiles. So I think I'm gonna leave it just slightly lower. Unfortunately, this bit looks nice. Whoops, this bit looks nicer than the top here. So we can decrease that later with an adjustment brush. Anyway, I'm happy with that, and let's just check where we are so far. So, God, what is that key? There's a key on the keyboard which you can see the before and after, like the original versus your changes now, and it's it's a backwards slash. Sorry, that's a bit stupid, but yeah, let's just hit that and see where we are. So basically, we're probably 60-70% of the way through. You know, this is bland and kind of, it looks a bit foggy almost, and now we've really brought the image to life. Adding contrast, you can see I haven't touched the vibrance or the saturation yet. Adding contrast does that for you. So it pulls the colours to the left and to the right of the histogram. So we've got nice vibrant green here. I don't even think I really need to do much to the colours. Maybe the greens on the Tzatziki down here could do with some saturation, but this is looking nice and vibrant up here. And the blues are going to run into a problem because the tiles are quite blue, but the bowl is blue as well, or it's kind of purple, and I like the purple of the bowl, but if I change any of the colour of the bowl, then I'll have to change the tiles as well, but we'll come to that when we do. So let's just see what happens if we increase the saturation of everything. I never really go beyond like 15 or 20, the saturation slider. The greens look lively. They look a bit unnatural though, with the saturation that high. So compared to the beginning, they look natural there, but they look, well, that looks okay. But I won't go that far anyway. I'm going to go to about 8. And then I'll increase the saturation using an adjustment brush later on the Satsiki. And let's see what happens if we increase the vibrance. So basically the vibrance slider, the way it differs to the saturation is if you increase it, all the colours that are not saturated are increased in saturation. So it doesn't touch the already saturated colours. So rather than the saturation slider, it'll just increase anything no matter what, to the point that it's like just ruins the picture really. But the saturation actually protects the already saturated colours. You can see if I increase that to the maximum, well, it still ruins it, but it gives it more protection to the saturated colours. So anyway, I'm not going to... Actually, that does a better job at increasing the greens while leaving the detail there. And then I'll increase the saturation of everything just to 5, just to give it a snap. The blues are now coming out nicely here. So I don't really think I need to do much to the colours anymore. Normally I might play around with the hue, saturation, luminance sliders, but I'm pretty happy with it there. Anyway, it's just for Instagram. Now, we finished with our basic panel. Oh, sorry, the white balance. You can actually do the white balance pretty much any time, so it doesn't really matter. But the white balance is as shot. I'm happy with it, to be honest. I don't really need to do anything to all the white balance. You know, it doesn't look... The hue of the tiles and the whites aren't like too yellow. I guess the whites here are slightly yellow. The light I shot this in was quite neutral, so... But anyway, the way I change the white balance is generally I'll use this pointer here and then adjust the sliders. So basically what you want to look for with the pointer is a target. It says there, it says the target neutral, and you want the RGB values to be as close to each other as possible. So that is a good point I found just here, 22, 22, 24.3. But everything would go completely wrong if we picked like a blue, because that's not neutral at all. You can see the blue percentage is much higher. And the preview in the top left corner here will go completely yellow to compensate. So we don't want that. So we want a completely neutral colour. Greys, that kind of thing, even on this line here between the tiles would be fine. All that's pretty close. So I'll click that and see what happens. I doubt it will change it much. What did it do? You keep an eye on these numbers here while I flick back and forward. It made it slightly more blue, take away the yellow, and slightly more green. I mean, the difference is marginal. I'm happy with what it says. I guess it gets rid of this slightly yellow hue, although I kind of like that with the olive oil. I'm going to leave it how it was. I'm happy with that. Okay, so split toning, we don't want to do that. Detail panel, we do want to come to that. Let's do that now. So basically, I'm going to reset this because I've got some automatic settings, which it imports the images and adds them on already. But I'll just put the sharpening back to 0. So right now we've got 0 sharpening applied. I'll get rid of the information. So the ISO was really low, which means we won't be seeing much noise at all, which is good, obviously. So we can sharpen our image quite a lot without being worried about sharpening noise, which is what happens if you have a noisy image. My voice just went a bit there, didn't it? Right, so this is, you can see there's absolutely no like snap to the leaves here, which is what you want to see. The point of complete focus is kind of on these leaves here, or maybe even up here you can see it better. But anyway, this is the focus of the image. So let's add some sharpening. 25 is the default. So let's see what happens if we add 25. And just go toggle back and forth. You can see that snap, it just sharpens every kind of pixel. It's really important to the image. So that does a decent job, but I like to take it right up to about 70 or even 80. Oh, that's too high. But the thing is, so that's sharpening the noise on the leaf. I'll zoom in even more. So the noise on the leaf has been sharpened. Let's just turn this off, you see what happens. So going back to the 25, which is slightly more of a sane amount of sharpening in this case. That looks fine, there's no noise being sharpened, but I do like having a nice sharp image, and actually this may look horrible to you now, but if we zoom out you can't see it at all, and it's nice and sharp, adds this kind of snap. Let's turn the detail panel off again. Yeah, you can see the difference. I like the sharpness it brings. But anyway, let's make sure we're not sharpening this noise anyway. I'll zoom out back to 1:1. Apparently you're always supposed to sharpen at 1:1. Personally, I often zoom in further. But, you know, let's leave it at 1:1 for now. And then using the masking is how we prevent ourselves sharpening the noise. So you can see this noise all around here, which has been sharpened, and basically moving the masking changes that, but we have to hold Alt or Option on a Mac, and now we see a white, everything's just white, but we'll move it up, and now everything that is white is going to be sharpened. So at masking 100, only the very edges are going to be sharpened of everything, but on the other extreme we got everything being sharpened. So my default, what you saw me have earlier, is 70 sharpening and 50 masking, and generally that's kind of fine for most images. Whoops. This one we're going to have masking a bit higher, and what you'll see is the noise is less pronounced compared to 0 masking. So I'll just show you that zoomed in even more. So the noise is sharpened here because I've turned the masking off, but turning the masking on, that noise is no longer sharpened. Equally, you know, the noise isn't sharpened here, but looks a bit soft. But so I'm actually gonna take that masking back to about 60. I'm happy with that. Now, our image is nice and sharp. Noise reduction is another. Sorry, yeah, I should have added. Noise reduction is another way you can get rid of noise. But you know, it basically, if you take it to 25, it kind of smooshes pixels together slightly. I don't really like the effect it brings. It's all a bit too smooth and just gets rid of the sharpness. And generally, I don't really use it, to be honest. Most people do. But I don't really use it. Because if we zoom out, you can't really see the noise at all. I mean, perhaps if you're going to print this, it might be important, like really large. Or maybe, I don't know, blow it up on a website or something. But, you know, we're not going to do that. So that's the detail panel done. Wait, let's just see if there's anything else. Yeah, color. The color noise it gets rid of is a brilliant slider. I always leave it at 25 pretty much. Let's see what we can see without the color noise cancelling. We can't see anything here. Let's just see what's happened. No, I mean, as I said, the ISO was really low. But say we were shooting at ISO 400 or 800, you'd see color noise, which is kind of more just like spots of purple and yellow and stuff like that. Oh yeah, here's some color noise. So if we've got no color noise reduction here, but if we turn it back on to, what was it, 25, then look, it's got rid of basically everything. It's a good slider, it always works. So just flicking back and forward, it's kind of like static, isn't it? Look. Anyway, let's leave it there. Right, lens corrections. So the profile, I actually have a micro four thirds sensor, which means No, it's not my sensor, sorry, it's the... Oh yeah, it's something about the sensor or being cropped and my lens being for a cropped sensor, which means I don't need to do any of this. The profile correction is already applied. But if you have a full frame sensor, you're going to have to find your lens here and it will apply some profile corrections. But let's leave that off because it doesn't apply here. I want to remove chromatic aberration. Let's see if we had any. We've got chromatic aberration. Basically is like you get sometimes a purple or like bluey green thing on the edges of stuff, particularly like trees and stuff like that. I can't really see much. Let's see on the leaves. No, but I always have it on anyway by default. And then if you see some and it's not getting rid of the chromatic aberration, when I say it's on trees, it might well be on this actually, on these leaves here. No, we're not going to find any. Oh, there's a slightly yellow. Oh, I don't know what I'm talking about. Talking a load of nonsense, aren't I? Anyway, another day, we'll show that. But yeah, you can do it manually as well. And then for some reason, the distortion is in this panel with the chromatic aberration, which is slightly weird. Normally, I find my lens is distorted. It's slightly fishbowl. I often have to increase this just to 5 so you can see what happens doing it a lot. And so I increase this just to about +5, get rid of that slight fishbowl effect. It should have done that in the profile corrections anyway, but normally doesn't do that. And then you hit constrain crop just to make sure you've got no transparent edges. But this image, it doesn't matter if we just forget about this whole thing because I can't see much of a problem. Why is that doing it incrementally? Let's go right the way back here. Yeah, that looks fine. Okay, transform. This will become important if your image is distorted or like wonky. This is slightly wonky actually. You can see the lines on the tiles indicate that it's slightly wonky, and Lightroom will want to straighten those, so it's going to rotate to the right, I think, if we click full transformation. Oh, what has that done? Oh, it's pulled this to make sure this line is upright, which is clearly not what we want. You can do it manually with this tool here. I'm not actually very good at this side of things. I mean, it looks perfectly fine to me, although if you want to do it manually in the crop, you can use this angle tool here and follow the line. So taking into account distortion, if we just pull this across here, follow the line that we want to be straight, that will make it straight. So, you know, that, I guess, the tiles look straighter, but we don't have the luxury of this cropping because the composition is bad. I don't have enough room around the borders, so I'm just going to get rid of that. We need this border, you know, otherwise it looks a bit ridiculous. Most, you know, people who are picky will notice this and be annoyed by it. Like horizon lines are important, but you know, this is food photography, it's not a landscape. Anyway, lastly, effects. I sometimes add a vignette like this, which looks pretty good. Looks pretty good actually. But yeah, nice and dramatic here, isn't it? And you can change the midpoint like this, or the sorry, I should add, holding Alt or Option makes you can see the vignette a lot clearer while you're wiggling these sliders, and then change the roundness, which I would probably do. But the thing is, I'm going to finish this image in... Actually, no, I was going to say, I often finish images in Photoshop and crop them, but I'm not going to do any cropping today because, like I mentioned, there's not enough bordering, although I might crop this out. But basically, if you crop in Photoshop, your vignette will be ruined, basically. It doesn't take that into account. But if you crop here, it does take that into account, so I should probably just crop here. Anyway, I'm not too bothered about vignettes anyway. Whoops, let's just reset this. Yeah, let's have -5 vignette. So, camera calibration, I basically never touch this panel. That's all you need to know about what I do anyway. You might want to explore it. So, what is missing from this image? This is slightly too blown out, I think. I'm going to add a radial filter onto the tzatziki itself. And, whoops, let's just reset that. A new radial filter. And the effect I want to add some clarity to the tzatziki. And then that's about it for now. Maybe 20 clarity. We want it to go inside the circle that I make. So tick the invert mask. You can always change it. So let's just do that now. There we go. Press O to see what's actually selected. You can see it's going out into the border and outside of the bowl a bit, so let's decrease the feathering. There we go. Hit O again. Now that looks pretty nice. Increasing the clarity. Too much clearly, but yeah, let's leave it at about 38. I like the blacks have been slightly reduced. Let's reduce the blacks a bit more, see what happens. That looks pretty good, more contrast. The whites, I doubt don't think we should bring them up. Nope. Let's reset them. And then we could bring back some detail with the highlights. It just looks a bit underexposed and flat, really. I'm happy with that. Now let's do a new. We're done with that. Let's use an adjustment brush to just brush over some more clarity onto these plants, because clarity is really important for like textures like plants and food and stuff. So let's just brush on some clarity here. Doesn't matter too much if you brush clarity onto the background as well, you can't really tell. And then let's hit O to see where our brush is. That's fine. I mean, you could use auto mask if you're being really picky. Press Z to zoom in, hold the space bar to scroll with the hand. You can't see any halo coming about from our adjustment brush from the clarity we've added. I mean, you can if you overdo it, but that's like 100 clarity. So let's just take this to something sane, about 27. Press Z again to zoom out. That's too high, I think, unless we increase the shadows slightly. Nah, let's leave that there. I'm happy with the clarity at about 17. That's done. I'm going to leave this because that's completely not the focus of the image. Right. I'm happy with that. I think what I sometimes do is add some, what do you call them? Graduated filters to look like a sunbeam is kind of coming in onto the food. So we could try that. Maybe underexposed from the left and overexposed slightly like a sunbeam. So let's do that quickly. Exposure down from the left, hold shift to make sure it's straight, and then O to see what we're affecting. I quite like that. Yeah, it makes the focus of the image more on the tzatziki, less on the crackers, so maybe a bit less. And then I could just overexpose from the right, holding shift to make sure it's straight, and that's okay. Quite like that, but let's just turn that one off for now and do a new exposure graduated filter down here. Just move it up, and then we can just rub out this bit here with the eraser. So nice and soft. We like the feather to be quite large so it's not too stark, and that's quite nice. If we rub out using the eraser on the brush, erase, and just get rid of this here really softly though, with a big feather, and the flow, which is basically that's like 100% that you're painting on. Look what's happened here. And this is kind of 60% or just less. I can't remember if it's a percentage, but we're not going to completely erase it. So let's get rid of the graduated filter down here. We press O, you can see it's getting rid of it. And then increase the feather, just make it straight like it's a sunbeam. Press O and see what happens if we increase the exposure more. You can see how it looks like a sunbeam coming in here. I like what that's doing to this spot here, but clearly this is too much here. So if we just use our eraser again, we can get rid of like a certain percentage of the graduated filter on the tzatziki and not on this bit here, which looks quite nice. So let's just get rid of using 60 flow on the actual tzatziki. You can see it's still slightly red, meaning it's still slightly working. Is it? Kind of. Is it even working at all? Well, I'm happy with that anyway. Let's just undo that, just so you know what the flow really does. And just get rid of. You can see it's barely affecting it now because I'm only using 9. But the more you add, the more it like works. The more brush strokes you add using the eraser, the more it adds. So that's pretty cool. I like the way that works. Press O. That looks pretty good. With the kind of as if the light is streaming through here. Might need to brighten up this area here slightly. But let's just compare that to when we had the graduated filter straight from the right. Where was it? Back here. Nope. Keep going back. There we go. Let's compare that. Yeah, so this is the one we want to compare to that. Which do we prefer? I prefer that. It's more dramatic. It adds something to the image. It's very nice. And then I'd just brighten up this area here just to... Or would I? Nah, I'm just going to leave it like that. Save you guys some time. Right, time to finish the image in Photoshop. Control E or Command E on a Mac to jump over to Photoshop. You don't have to do this if you don't have Photoshop. You could just export it now from Lightroom. But I often like to finish things in Photoshop to add a final contrast using the soft light blending mode and to use their spot removal tool, which is far better than the Lightroom one. Right, so let's duplicate the layer using Control or Command J. Change the mode to soft light, which adds a contrast, which looks great in certain areas, looks really bad in others. So change the opacity down to like 20. Turn that on and off to see what it's done. I like that. Let's add a snap and stuff like that. I like what it's done to the blues on the tiles. And then we could add a layer mask if there's certain areas that we don't like. B for the brush, increase with the right square bracket key, and then just paint out where we don't want, like on this black area here. So you can see it doesn't affect this area here on the layer mask. But anyway, yeah, this is what I'd normally do. And then I'd add a new layer, Control or Command Shift N for the new layer. R1, retouch 1, the spots, spot removal, there's barely any I can see. Press Z to zoom in. There might just be some on the edge of this bowl. I thought that was some tzatziki, but it's actually a light reflection. Holding space just to scroll around the image. I can't see anything wrong with this. There's nothing on the sides of the bowl. Oh, here we go. So I could, if I was being really picky, get rid of these spots here. So press J for the spot removal. It's on the patch spot removal. We want the actual, what do you call it? Spot healing brush. Yeah, no, spot healing brush, that's the one. And then this will just do a great job. We want this to make sure this button here with the kind of squares is down, because then it will, this is a blank layer, it's going to affect the layers below. And then this will be very easy just to clean up here. It's doing an okay job on those outer spots. you know, it's a bit tedious. I kind of enjoy doing it, to be honest. Control Alt Z to get rid of that one. I think we're gonna have to use the clone tool. S for the clone tool, Alt for the source area, right click, or what is it, command click on a Mac, increase the hardness, because the spot removal tool is taking this bit into account when it's healing, but we don't want it to do that, so the clone tool would be better. Turn it down and just sample just next to where the tzatziki is spreading up. Look at this, doing a great job at clearing it up. To sample that area there. Might look a bit too stark, but once we zoom out, it'll be fine. Maybe slightly lower hardness. Hardness is basically the feathering. And that looks pretty fine to me. We could get rid of this area, but it probably doesn't show anyway. Yeah, there you go. And it's a bit kind of too hard, but we can just decrease the opacity to get it back, get the bits back slightly. Let's go 70%, and I think we're done. Right, so I would normally finish by cropping or adding a vignette, but I'm not going to do that today. Or I might get rid of these lines. Control or Command Shift Alt or Option S is the Save for Web shortcut. I prefer this to the export panel. Let's just decrease the size here. I normally try the JPEG compression is really good, so I use a really low quality and try to keep as many pixels in as possible, rather than doing something like 80% quality and low and really small pixels. So this is just for, I mean, I know this is just for Instagram, so it really doesn't matter much, but if this was for your blog or something, quality, let's take it right down to 6 because the algorithms are good. And then the percentage of image pixels, I like to, so the file size you can see down here is 500 kilobytes. Maximum quality is going to be something big, like 12 megabytes or something. 10 megabytes, yeah, obviously that's way too big. And pointless amount of quality. So let's just view this fit on screen. So yeah, I'm going to take this right down to 6%, and I know that's a bit drastic, but you can't see a difference. This preview seems to not really work in my experience very well. Maybe it's just my laptop, my Photoshop or something. It's a mystery to me, but sometimes it actually doesn't look like what the final JPEG actually does. So that's still too large. If I was to post this image on my blog, that would just take far too long to load on people's phones and stuff. So I like photos to be honest, really small, like 100 kilobytes. And on a phone, you could never tell the difference. So we're going to have to decrease the percentage of pixels. I normally do about, I don't know, width 2000, so 45%-ish. Oh wait, 1500. See what that does to it. Right, that's right down to 147 kilobytes. I'm fine with that. If I was saving it for a blog, I'd go even further, maybe to 35, which would be about 100 kilobytes, yeah. But I'm happy with 45 for this Instagram image. Save it where you want, obviously. Vegan tzatziki for tutorial. And that's done. I mean, I would normally save this as a TIFF as well, but that's not a tutorial for today. So I hope you like this tutorial. If you want to check out the image, it will be on my Instagram at @discoverdelicious. I'll leave a link below, and also like and subscribe if you like it, or check out the actual recipe maybe on discoverdelicious.org. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys another time. Bye.